Perfect. So the first thing on the agenda is the update from town administration. So Patrick, you want to, or Jim, whoever's going to give that.
Yeah, sure. So, as I think you're all aware, fall town meeting took place on Saturday, October 17th, and considered a 29 article warrant. On that warrant was the cost of living adjustment, Article 9, for the non-union employees. And I'm pleased to report that town meeting approved the 2% cost of living adjustment that the personnel board had recommended. As I sent around a memo today from Jim to the personnel board, indicating that we're already starting our FY22 budgetary process. So those directives went out to town department heads earlier this month, at the deadline of the end of this month to get their department budgets in to Jim, so we can start the budget formulation process. So as part of this, I know it feels like we're just coming off the heels of the FY21 cost of living adjustment, but we wanted to start the FY22 cost of living adjustment conversation, so those departments can take that determination back and start building their budgets based on that number, so we don't need to go back and make another adjustment. So if you look in the memo that I provided earlier today, it includes some preliminary information. So namely, every time we do the cost of living adjustment, we took a look at the information from market indicators, comparable union adjustments here in Walpole, as well as comps from the school department, and then what non-union positions are earning in other towns. So I was able to provide all that information. The only sticking point has been the comparable information from other cities and towns that we normally collect information from. And I explained in the memo explains that I think the reason for that is because so many of them are still dealing with their implications for FY21. And frankly, I think the memo was pretty clear that they're not in the same stable position that the town of Walpole's in. They're still waiting through FY21. So we sent out actually a survey just the other day, and the only towns that have responded so far are the ones that are included in that memo. So as you're taking a look at it, and actually for the people who are probably watching at home, of the economic indicators that we usually use, you'll notice that there's an average of 1.73 cost of living adjustment for those indicators. The union comparable wages, these are all for the FY22 contracts that were just approved at town meeting, with an average of 2.17. The school department, their unions with the non-union employees still to be determined, that they're still trying to figure out their budget for FY22, but on average 1.81%, and then other town non-union COLAs, that's 1.79% for the towns that have responded back from the survey. So for an average of all those sources, it's 1.88%. So that's kind of where we are. Normally what takes place is the town administrator gives the personnel board his recommendation, and then there's a discussion. But given how, given the position that we're in, we wanted to at least have this conversation with you first, and see what the appetite of the board was, and given these considerations, what you're looking at, so he can go back, take that information, and start to make a recommendation. So I'll turn it back to you, Mike.
Okay. I guess why don't we just kind of go around? Larry, I'd like to start with you. I think I'm expecting probably a similar conversation that we had the last time we had this, but I think the question would be sustainability of ongoing increases, right?
I guess a first question. I get you use the unions as a reference point, and I guess I'm trying to connect the dots. Those contracts are collectively bargained in a sense. You have a union representative, and there's a give and take. These folks, these are not union positions, and it's the non-management and non-union. So I guess I don't understand. I guess you reference their contracts, but in a sense, the management team of the town, at least the senior management team, negotiates these contracts. So I think I'm trying to understand why you would use that as a reference as you negotiate them.
So actually for three reasons. One, we usually use that Mark Morse, he's Mark Morse, he's the one that does the wage study, and he recommends that that's a comparable area that we look at when making this determination. Another reason is because that this is an indication of the increase in the market conditions. So whether or not, they're collectively bargained, they're bargained for that purpose, keeping those wages at that pace. So we're trying to maintain that same increase in the pace. And third, because we're trying to maintain at least some level of parity between the working groups. So if one's outpacing another, that's going to create some divisions between the working groups.
Well, their wages, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, from say the chief of any department to the regular employee, I'll say the non-managers, there's quite a difference of pay typically. So I would think a 2% raise on $50,000 is what, 1,000? 2% on 100 is two. I mean, there's just I don't buy that argument, quite honestly. That to me, there's a already the management team already is well compensated, and it's also, I guess I'll go back to what I've asked before, the people who are on steps, which I think last time we spoke was probably around 75 to 80% of the non-union folks. Is there some opportunity to have them get a combination of a step and a cost of living increase combination? Because otherwise you're giving the cost of living, I'll use 2% as the point, and then the step is another, I believe, 2 or 4%. So I just don't know how we can continue down that path of sustainability if we continue to do that. Never mind, that's adding to the pension obligation that we don't fund fully. We pulled money out of OPEB this year, and that should be an operating budget line item that's funded as if we had a mortgage, because we do. And we're cutting and playing, and honestly playing with that number. And I don't think that's to sit there and say we're not going to pay their medical benefits or fund it appropriately, but give everybody a raise. I just don't. I struggle with that, and I guess I just do. I'll stop there.
So not to be argumentative, but I just want to clarify that there is a wage difference between the chief of police and a patrolman because of obviously the qualifications that separate them. And also we're not in a position where we're trading cost of living adjustments for dental benefits. So, I just want to be clear about that also. So I'll stop there also. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just want to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing.
Well, I do, because you mentioned parity, so that's why I brought that up.
Okay.
The chief versus the head of any department is again, because of he or she has a lot more responsibilities. I get that, but they're well compensated nonetheless for those responsibilities.
It looks to me like one of a good basis of comparisons, and I know you said you hadn't heard from a lot of towns, but is what the other town non-union COLA is, which averages to 1.79. The last, am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah.
the towns that we surveyed,
Right.
The only ones that have replied so far, Dover, Stoughton, Wellesley, Medway, Acton, and Rockland. So you see that the average there.
Yeah, you can see the difference, in towns. But from what I read and what you provided and what Jim has said before, he feels even going into I'm just not sure about the state aid, where that's coming. I read one thing which said that the state revenues were actually better than they thought they were going to be, so that the state aid might not be to the towns might not be cut as much as we were all fearful of. Am I?
Sure. So I think it's also important to paint a picture of kind of I guess, what the state's presently doing. So actually right now, the House of Representatives, they're debating the FY21 operating budget. So they haven't set a budget for the present fiscal year that we're in. They've been doing, a couple months at a time. So they're actually debating a budget from now through the end of the fiscal year. And in that budget, they've level funded local aid for each city or town from what it was in FY20. So as far as FY22 goes, and that's the cost of living adjustment that we're talking about tonight, they haven't even figured out what they're doing for FY21 yet before they're able to give us an idea of what the FY22 local aid numbers are going to look like.
But for 21, it hasn't been cut, right? I mean, it's comparable.
It's been level funded.
Right.
I have a question. Do these cost of living impact the contracts that are? I know there's a few folks that have contracts. Do they, in a sense, get the same, or is that a totally different deal in a sense?
The contracts, they're all totally separate deal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been on mute and I'd like to chime in a little bit here, if you guys are okay with that. I'm looking for some guidance from you guys. When we met back in June, I proposed an idea of doing some 3-year across the board because quite honestly, I've had this conversation 16 years in a row, it seems like. Every year it's the same thing, and I kind of wanted to streamline it. The feedback I got from your board, excuse me, was that no, let's go with the 1 year and we'll reevaluate this in the fall. I'm setting the budget. I'd really like some direction before I make a recommendation to you guys as to what you be comfortable with explaining and presenting to town meeting. So that's, and Larry, you asked about, well, why are we comparing non-union people to union people? Well, that's the way we've always done it, and the personnel board has been satisfied with us using that as one of our criteria, using the other 3 criterias that Patrick had listed out there. I think it's some of the federal guidelines on that one. I'll pull it up, but it's in your packet there that he broke down. The economic indicators, the Northeast, the Boston, the union comparable wages, school wages in other towns. Those are always the criteria we've used. So if your board wants to change it, just tell us. We're not trying to compare union to non-union people. We're trying to be fair across the board. And it's a unique time, and I'm just trying to set the budget. So I guess I put it back on you guys. What number are you comfortable with going forward with that? And I've never done it this way. It's completely different because this is a completely different year. Usually I present the number, here it is, and I explain it to you. I'm asking for it to be done the opposite way. You give me a number you're comfortable with, I'll review it, and then hopefully in a week or so get back to you and say, yes, this is what the impacts are. I can tell you roughly a 2% increase is worth about $90,000 if we did it across the board for non-union people on the side. So, you know, cut that in half, 1% is 45. So what do you guys think?
Jim, that's to the overall, that's the overall budget impact would be 90,000.
Yeah,
or 45 at 1%.
Yeah. It's roughly, Chris or Pat, tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's about 80 to 90 people total that are impacted.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
So will we have enough? I mean, where does that money, where is that money coming from? And will we have that money for next year?
Where is that money coming from? It's coming from taxation. So it's, once I put all the pieces together, that's when I figure out, okay, I don't have enough here. This is what's available for the schools. But by waiting on setting the non-union people until after I have the budget numbers are all due, it totally throws myself, Chris, Val, and Patrick off because we have to go back into the budget and plug it in. So I'm looking for, you know, you have some averages here. It seems like you know, I think it's tough to justify a 2% COLA. I've never said that before, but I think this is one of those years that it's really tough to justify that for the non-union folks. You know, you have the numbers in front of you. The average is 1.88. We've never, you know, we've done splits. I know HR and the payroll department's not fans of splits, and for workload wise, I try to avoid a split. So what's your general thoughts? Would you like me to really look closely at a 1% COLA or 1.5% COLA? So that's what I'm looking for what Patrick's looking for.
Jim, I have a question, or Pat. Let's say the management budget, management salaries, whatever. I'm going to use an example: $1 million in total for the year, and then if we give a 2% increase, that would increase our budget $20,000. I guess what approximately? So using an example, that all we're doing is just going from $1 million to $1,020,000. Are we going from $1 million to $1,050,000 because it's not just the COLA, but it's the steps and whatever else is in there. So that's a number you can ascertain. I was just wondering total. You mentioned 90. Is that just for the COLA that doesn't include the steps, right?
It does not include the steps.
Okay.
And I know we can get that broken out because I actually had it ready to go at town meeting if I was questioned on it. I didn't outline it in this memo, but that's easy enough to put together. I'm guessing roughly the non-union people, it seems about half of them are still in the steps and half are not. Pat, Chris, does that number sound familiar? About half the people are still in steps?
For the purpose of round numbers here, so if it's about half the people and, for, I don't know, for 1%, I'm looking at that 1%. So if 1% is 45,000, so like half of that, if we were to do like 2%, half of that would be approximately about 45,000, but I don't have that off at my fingertips either, so we can get that for you. But I think like it's also important to point out that the purpose of the steps and the purpose of the COLA, they try to accomplish two different purposes. So one is merit and performance based, the other one's more economic. So just I wanted to make that clear that sometimes in the course of discussion those get mixed together, and the purpose of them is to accomplish two different purposes.
So just Larry, I pulled up my cheat sheet from town meeting. The FY cost for non-union step increases from the professional side, it was 27, hourly side 48, for a total of 32,319. So figure roughly the steps cost us $32,000 to $40,000, which about falls in line with what Pat just said. I'm all for it. We tried in the past to get rid of the steps and this step thing, and it really didn't work. The consultant came back and said it's disproportionate. I'm okay if we do that, but I always say to you guys, you can't do it in the middle of settings. You got to tell us before. If that's what you want, we're going to put it in the budget. I'm going to have someone come in and redo our whole salary schedule, because quite honestly, with the small HR department we don't have the staff to do it. Well, I'll hire someone like the search firms that are out there that specialize in this type of thing. I'm fine, but now's not the time to redo that.
Can we go with 1.8% and just follow similar to what the other towns are doing? It's recognizing that there's a pandemic and we gave 2% last year, but that, we feel we want to be cautious, and it's not out of line with what the other towns are doing, or
You could certainly do that. I'd actually recommend, if you're going to go there, 1.75, just to keep it on the 0.25%. So.
That's what I would.
okay.
That's what I would propose as well.
Okay, that sounds very reasonable to me.
But
And I'm with-
the average union, this is all up top. It says cost of living adjustments fiscal 2022. So it's for the contracts that were just approved at town meeting, and it's for fiscal 22, not the cycle. We're not in 21. It's 22, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Thanks.
So we'd come in just a hair above the average based on the economic indicators that you've given us at 1.75 and less than the 2%, which I think just shows that we're being cautious. So.
And conservative, and I'm comfortable with that.
I think the other towns are 1.79 and the economic indicators is 1.79. So it's just slightly under the union comp and the school. I think to me, that's a very reasonable number. And I think it's, with the world the way it is right now, that's very reasonable. That's my thought.
Do we need to vote on that?
Did Jane make that in the form of a motion?
Okay, I have a question before you do that. You can, but what if the state comes back and says, they don't want to tap the rainy day fund, which is they're using partly to supplement the budget, or the fiscal 22 budget comes in and they're going to have to cut things. What do we do then? Do we come back and revisit this, or is it kind of locked in and that's just the way it goes?
You can certainly revisit it. And Larry, you know how conservative I am with some of these numbers that we've generated from the state, and it's all estimates. What I'm going into FY22 is anticipating a 10 to 20% reduction from the state figures. This year, we anticipated a 10% reduction. If everything stays on track, we're gonna bring in about an extra $157,000 in state aid that, because of what we budgeted at the spring town meeting. So that money will fall to free cash. I've already spoken to Nancy Gallivan and Bridget Goff. The schools are looking at, more than the 700, almost 800,000 that we gave them last year as their cut of the municipal, the budgets that we put together. So certainly, Larry, when things kind of iron themselves out come February, March, even maybe April, I'm going to have a much better sense then. And if it gets down to it, I've already told the unions, if it gets really bad, I'm either going to come to you. I'm going to let you make the choice. You can either take zeros, or you can take zeros or eliminate going into that year with layoffs. And I'm going to make them make the choice. And I come to you folks, and do a zero before I did layoffs for sure. I wouldn't feel comfortable laying people off without it first looking at the zeros.
Okay, so do we need a motion? I'm sorry, Larry, I
Yeah.
didn't cut you short. Are you okay?
So we need a motion to recommend the cost of living increases at 1.75 for fiscal year 22.
Yes, please.
I'll second it. Is that what we need?
Did anyone actually
Yeah.
make the
Someone's
motion?
going to make the motion.
I will
Oh, I
move
thought you just said it.
I
It
will-
sounded so good. Oh,
I
you
will
can't make
move
the motion? Oh,
to do what
sorry.
Mike just said.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
John,
yeah, right.
1.75%.
Sorry about that, Mike.
And,
Okay.
I
So
I know
did
I
you-
was quiet through, but I agree with that.
Okay, did you second it? Did you second it, John?
he
No, I
you
made it.
He made it.
Oh,
You
you
seconded
made
it.
You seconded.
And I
it.
seconded. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Out of
Just
order.
wanted to- Okay,
So,
sorry about that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again,
Opposed? I'm
opposed?
not comfortable saying yes in this volatile time that we're committing to something that we really don't know yet. I think doing this just because that's how we usually do it is not the rationale I'm comfortable with. So for
And
now,
just-
I'd gladly revisit this and talk about it further as we get closer to the spring budget season and find out what the state's doing and find out, economically how we're doing. I understand you have to set a budget now, and I get that. You have to plug a number in. I mean, $90,000, like you mentioned, isn't going to unbalance the budget, but I understand you want to plug something in. So that's where I'm at.
Well, if I could just say for the record, I don't agree with the fact that we're doing it just because this is the way we always have done it. I think Jane had mentioned, it's showing that we are being conservative. And I think if you read through Jim's memo, the way he is going about producing the budget is under a worst case scenario. So, things probably aren't going to be worse than the calculations and the considerations, assumptions he's using. They're probably going to be better. So I think what we're doing, well, the reason why I'm in favor of 1.75 is because, yes, we as a group should impose and expect fiscal discipline from the town, but I think we're seeing it in Jim's approach. And and then on the other hand, I just think it's to impose that fiscal discipline on this tiny group of workers for a relatively small amount of money is somewhat unfair. So I think, that's why I went with the 1.75, not because we always come up with a little less than 2, but I think there's a valid reason for the steps that Jim set out in the memo that it's a pragmatic and conservative choice at this point.
And if I could just say, I think that the 1.75, based on the indicators and the comparison numbers that you were able to provide to us at this time, makes me confident that that's an okay number to plug into the budgeting process, so that you have that to work with. If you're looking to us to give you the number versus you making a recommendation, I think that's the best number that we can come up with based on what we've got in front of us right now. So
Thank you.
Okay.
Pat, do we have to do a roll call just because we're over Zoom?
Yeah, if I could, actually, I was just going to mention that, Mike, if you wouldn't mind doing this as a roll call.
yeah. Okay. So Jane,
Yes.
John,
1.75.
Yes.
Larry.
No, right now.
Okay. And I'm a yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. So that'll help us. We can give that information back to the department heads. They'll start putting together their budget requests and get those into Jim by the end of this month. So thanks, guys. That's
Thank
really
you.
Thanks, Jim. All right, I lost the agenda here. What's next?
right. So actually, next on the agenda, we've got a job description. This is for the assistant treasurer collector position. So actually, I'm pleased to inform you that Jody Cuneo, who still is the town accountant, it's become the finance director because Marilyn Thompson has retired after many long years in public service. And Lisa Sinkus has just moved up into her role as the treasurer collector. You may remember earlier this year, we created that treasurer collector position to allow Jody to become the finance director. So then Joan, who's also in that office, who's been working in that office for quite some time, has stepped up into the role of assistant treasurer collector. And now because of that change of the treasurer collector and finance director, we're essentially just revising this job description so it's more accurate to the present requirements as far as reporting structure, and also the couple other changes here and there that the finance department is recommending. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Didn't seem like there were really a lot of changes. It seemed really clear to me what you were asking for, and I didn't have any suggestions.
Okay, and we're really lucky to have Joan. It's Joan DaCosta. She's the one who's in the position now. Like I mentioned, she's been in that office for quite some time, and really lucky we've got a strong financial team in place. That's all I have to say about that.
I was just double checking the one question that I had that I just remembered from the last few that we've kind of reviewed is that statement. And I don't know if it's there for all levels, but just that statement around access to certain information could put the town at risk, or
Where are you looking, Mike?
I don't see it here. I guess I'll have to go back. I should have looked at it earlier. But there was a line in there with other more senior positions that the access to information that they have is, any mistakes or any errors could put the town at risk. Does this fall into that same category, and do we have to put that? Does it
Actually, the bonded position. So I don't have access to it in a Word document to search through it quickly. I'm just trying to take a look.
Yeah, I scanned it again. I don't see it here, but I don't know if it applies,
So it definitely does. And I know the language you're talking about. I think, the one example I keep coming back to is with the job description of the health director. So,
yeah. So that's where we
Well,
first caught
is
it,
it-
and then we applied it a couple of times.
Is it number 8 under distinguishing characteristics?
actually, yeah, John, I think that's exactly what we're looking for here. Mike, is that what you're looking at?
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. Okay. So it's there.
And like I mentioned, this position requires the individual to be to receive a public official bond too. So just to kind of give you a extent
Do you think that should be taken out? Number 8?
No, I think it was in one of the older job descriptions for health director, and then we added it. We added it to the new position, and then there was another position that we approved just a few months ago that we had to. It just came up that we needed to add it there as well. So I think I'm good that it's there. That's
Okay.
That's all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember discussing it.
Especially in this position.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions about this position?
I didn't have any others.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I just ask, all of 3 was, no, well, let's see, it was changed. Most of it was taken out. Now it's just work with treasurer collector to ensure proper control of department receipts. Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
All right. So can I get a motion to approve this job description as it's presented?
Make a motion to approve this job description as presented.
And I will second that.
Great. All right. So let's just do a vote. So John,
Yes,
Larry,
Yes,
I'm losing you. Sorry, Jane.
Yes,
Great. And I'm a yes as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Then moving on, we've got the personal action requests. I sent over a revised one this afternoon. There were a few last minute ones. So rather than having these held up for another few weeks or so, figured we'd add them to the list. So you'll see that the ones that we've added were highlighted in yellow, and happy to answer any questions about the personal action requests.
Just to be clear, so the first highlighted one that you sent over has Karen Cook.
That's right. Actually, so
Yep.
Adriela Fernandez in the assessor's office has retired after decades of service to the town of Walpole. And Karen Cook, who is the customer service rep in that office, stepped up into that role. She was promoted to the staff assistant in that office.
Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure we're looking at I was looking at the right one.
Oh,
Yeah, no, we're good. I don't have any questions on this.
what do the highlighted ones mean, the yellow?
those are just the ones that were added in the revised
Oh,
list I
gotcha.
added. I sent out on this afternoon.
election officers, that's just for election day, right? Or
Yeah,
is that,
right, yeah.
okay, okay, that's what I was assuming.
Nothing can go through our munis accounting system unless we've got a PAR that backs it up. So
Okay, yeah,
is
I
that-
figured that. That's why there were so many new hires there.
retirement.
Do we need a
let me just clarify too. So it's just for election day. They'll stay in the system, presumably they'll work at a local election, but they'll stay in the system.
Okay.
There won't be a need to rehire them.
do we need to approve this as well?
Yeah, if I can ask you, if you're going to make a motion to approve them, if you could also, in the motion, authorize me to sign on your behalf, so I can sign all. I don't know how many are here, Chris, but I think there's going to be a lot. Actually, I just want to point out too, behind that, Chris, these are the step increases also here, right? Is that not? I mean, the cost of living adjustments for that were authorized at town meeting. So I just want to point out that there's additional pages there. Behind that first initial sheet that, like you mentioned, everything needs a PAR in order for it to be processed through our accounting system. So it's more than just that cover sheet there.
Does that include the hourly
Yeah,
information behind it?
it includes, if I'm not mistaken, I think it also includes the clerical. I mean, all the union staff also. So everybody who got a living adjustment as part of either their collective bargaining agreement or the personnel board. The cost of living adjustments with the personnel board. They're all included there.
I have a question. I see Val on here got an increase. I thought she was just a contractual employee. Am I misreading that?
No, so she's not contractual. I think there was some misunderstanding with that. So she's not contractual. She's getting a wage that's also set on the schedule. So it's not contractual, and she's still subject to the same increases that everybody else is.
Is she limited? I don't know. I thought she retired. I don't understand. She can do this, retire, and do this to a certain amount or a limit, or I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know what that exact number is. I know she's watching it very carefully. I don't know the exact number of hours that she's authorized to work per the Norfolk County retirement and the pension system, but she's authorized to come back to work a certain number of hours. I think it's on an annual basis.
Is it considered a temporary position, or is this regular time benefits and everything?
Not benefits, and I think I mentioned at the last meeting that she's it's on on an as-needed basis. So particularly while we were preparing the cost estimates for the collective bargaining agreements, and more recently now putting those into place, she's been helping out. After we get through the budget period, anticipate that her workload will start to drop off, but. It was an arrangement that she and Jim had come to review on an annual, on a year-to-year basis, in lieu of hiring, a replacement for Chelsea on a full-time offices. So she's helping out in the office on a part-time basis.
Is there a plan to hire a replacement?
Eventually, we will see kind of how this works out in the meantime. Truthfully, Larry, so it was one of the positions that we kind of identified when COVID first struck that we're not filling full time. So in addition to that position, there's a principal clerk position in our office that has been eliminated. The finance committee clerk position has been eliminated. So it's just we're trying to tighten the belt as much as we can. And fortunately, Valerie has many years of experience and was willing to kind of come back and help us as much as we essentially need her. So.
Okay.
So is she, I'm gonna keep going on this, I'm sorry.
keep-
Is she
keep
20
going, yeah.
hours, 40 hours, if it's 40 hours a week?
No, I think it's 15, Larry. She's a
Okay.
part-time person. It's yep. Christine's shaking her head. It's 15 hours a week,
15, okay.
part-time. And that's on average. Like I said, for the majority of the year, it's going to be really difficult, trying to fill that workload. So it might be staggered, some more hours in some weeks than others. We're going into our budget season, so like I mentioned, I think I anticipate her helping out a lot more around this time of the year than May, June, July, that time frame. So yeah, she's helping out on average about 15 hours a week. Any other questions?
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the personnel updates as they're presented, and also authorization for Patrick to approve those updates on our behalf?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Great. So let's do a roll call vote. Larry?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes, for me as well.
Okay, thanks, folks.
Okay. So we just have to approve the minutes, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Yes.
That's one thing I didn't look.
September 29th.
I see in the minutes we asked about an org chart. Did I see it, or did I just not, did we ever get one, or maybe I'm misremembering?
No, so sorry, that was my mistake. I can see about putting one together. I'm sorry. When we were talking about that, it was relative to, if I'm not mistaken, it was the finance department, and we were replacing the finance director slash treasurer collector position with the finance director slash town accountant. And at the time I displayed one on the screen. So I don't have one that's more up to date. And then, I kind of got sucked into town meeting mode. So if that's something that the personnel board's looking for, then frankly, I think it's good to kind of have on hand. Let me work with the personnel department. See if we've got one that's most up to date and look at revising that. So it's, I figure with some of the positions we've been eliminating and, the restructuring the finance department, some other things, it might be helpful to have a more up-to-date one on hand anyway. So let me work with the finance department. The personnel department. We'll get one to the personnel board to review maybe the next few weeks or so.
Would it be possible to get one, as of, I don't know, January, whatever, today, and then as of, say, a year ago, just to kind of, could we see that change, or does it not make sense?
No, yeah, we can certainly do that. Yeah, that shouldn't, like you said, it's kind of a handful of positions, so it shouldn't be too difficult to create that document. And actually, frankly, it's among the personnel board's responsibilities is maintaining one up to date anyway. So why don't I work with Christine and Valerie, and we'll put one together and present it hopefully for your next meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for bringing that back up too.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So we just need a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the September 29th minutes.
Second,
Great. So just a roll call vote. John,
Yes,
Jane,
Yes,
Larry,
yes.
and I'm a yes. So our next meeting, we should hold one on December 8th. Does that work for everybody?
sure.
Sure.
Yeah, that looks good. And I don't anticipate any additional business between now and then that we would need to get the group together. So yeah, no, I think if it works for everybody, I'll send something out. So Julie's kept in the loop too. And like this is a good target date for Chris, Valerie, and I to try to put together that org chart and get it to you beforehand. So I think that'll be a helpful tool. And thanks again for meeting tonight and for the determination on the COLA. That's going to be really helpful for the budget process.
All right, everybody. So a motion
Thank you.
we need a motion to adjourn.
And a roll call.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I vote yes.
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 Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Go on.
Stay healthy, everybody. See you later.
Yes.
Bye. You too. Bye.